Vault Veritas SCP Files Episode 36 Husk. Niall is at it again, leaving reports sitting out on my desk. Miranda hasn't given me a new one in quite some time, and there's still plenty left in my pile of older reports. But she also seems quite content to take the recordings I've made on the ones Niall suggests. I suppose it doesn't matter that I'm not actually making a dent in the old reports that are just sitting around the office? Wasn't that the entire reason I was placed here? Sometimes, I'm not really sure if my job makes 1 ounce of difference at all in the Foundation, and I wonder if I'm making myself nauseous and ill for absolutely no reason. But if it's to help out Niall, I suppose that's worth it. Surely he's getting some use out of these. He wouldn't just make me read it for no reason. I've skimmed this one already, prior to starting the recording, and I've noticed a few interesting discrepancies. The first being that this report was typed, not handwritten. This is the only report I've ever come across that isn't a messy scrawl requiring careful deciphering. The second discrepancy is that, when I check the database, SCP-6499 is currently listed as missing, as is D-15378. The reporter. The date they both originally vanished is redacted. And the final discrepancy, you'll see. Just listen. Incident Report 6499-12. 12th known incident report involving SCP-6499, colloquially known as Remain Calm. Object Class: Safe. Risk Assessment Level: Low. In the margins, someone, likely Niall, has also written Potentially Beneficial. Reported by D-15378, also known as Ike Bauer. Report date is redacted. I can no longer keep track of how many days I have been here. This is the first day where I can no longer squeeze another tally mark onto the walls of the armored van. My prison cell. Every surface around me is covered in those marks, scratched with my fingernails into every possible inch of the cold metal walls. The air trapped in here with me is heavy and stale, thick with the lingering scent of rust and old rot. And through the tiny crack in the jammed, distorted van doors, a thin slice of orange light cuts across the floor as the sun begins its climb into the sky yet again. I could count the tally marks, But would it do me any good? I feel a momentary flicker of something, maybe fear, maybe panic. But I quickly push it down, smothering it into the pile of emotional embers I've been nurturing for who knows how long. Worry, regret, sadness, all of them distant, smoldering embers that no longer matter. In retrospect, I should regret covering the walls with the tally of my endless days. I thought they'd help me stay grounded, keep me calm as I waited for rescue. But now, they are only a reminder of how long I've been trapped here. Each one is an etched testament to time that slipped away through that tiny crack in the doors. A part of me wants to feel something about that. It seems as though it ought to feel heavy, frightening, lonely. But then the dullness sets in again. And really, what's the point of all this introspection? There's nothing to be done. Nothing at all. I sit here, listening to the faint groan of metal as the van shifts, and the occasional whisper of wind whipping against the moss-coated rubble outside. I don't even bother checking for sounds of life anymore. I just sit and wait, and open SCP-6499 to flip through one more time. It's hard to believe there was ever a time that I hadn't known the contents of 6499 as well as I know my own heartbeat. I was even warned about it during my mission briefing, as though it were some dangerous item that would hurt me. I may be a D-class, but I am a fortunate one. By pure random luck, I was selected for the rather tame job of anomaly transportation. There aren't many of us couriers in each country, but it is an important job. Albeit one that, as we found out, can easily go awry. We ensure that their containment protocols are maintained during transportation, often between testing sites or storage locations. We're briefed beforehand on what to expect, how to act, and what we have already discovered about the anomaly, and it's usually all quite simple. "Don't touch this" is the most common instruction, followed by "don't look at this," or sometimes "look at this extremely closely." My moving team consisted of me, another D-class, and a rather laid-back security officer. I knew them well. We spent many a day driving endlessly together, listening to the music play and making idle chatter, and many a night found us all squeezed into a cheap and filthy motel room. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't bad, and they actually made for pretty good company. I don't want to focus on that, though. Thinking about them brings up those old pangs of loss of guilt. And I'd rather leave those ashes where they lie. SCP-6499 was one of those we were just supposed to ignore. Leave it be in its container and never look at it under any circumstances. It was one of 10 different safe class anomalies we were transporting. The others don't matter. I'm not sure I even remember what they were after all this time. They were tame, I know that at least. Tame enough that they were being sent to long-term storage in a site that is nothing more than a warehouse of lockers where mundane anomalies sit and wither. It was my turn to sit in the back of the armored van and attempt to keep myself entertained as we drove. Technically, I was ensuring the stability of the containment procedures, but that was just a fancy way of saying there's only enough room up front for 2 people. I have no idea what caused the explosion. I've thought about it many, many times during my imprisonment. A group of interest that uncovered our routes? A new anomaly we'd never encountered before? I can tell you it wasn't any of the SCPs we were transporting. Those all stayed neatly and tediously in their places, right up until the earth-shattering impact. One moment, I was staring at the steel containment crates, mindlessly counting the bolts along the edges. The next, a deafening blast of screeching metal and flying shrapnel filled the air as my world turned upside down, lurching violently as I was tossed against the sides of the van. My forehead struck the edge of a crate, and stars erupted across my vision. I could hear muffled shouts from my teammates up front, and then a distant cry of, "Dear God, where is it taking us?" The van was fully on its side. The crates spilled open, and the SCPs scattered about as they were broken free. I tried not to look at them, to stand, but my head swam and pulsed with an aching vengeance, and I lost my balance, sinking back down onto my knees. I was dimly aware of the fact that the van doors had been thrown open, and I tried to crawl towards them to pull them shut before the anomalies could roll out. I was halfway there when the entire vehicle flipped, crashing and rolling, chucking me this way and that with such force I thought I would die. And then I lost consciousness. When I came to, everything was a dark, uniform gray. The only noise was the constant whining tinnitus in my ears as I struggled to push myself up and onto my elbows. The doors to the front of the van were closed again, twisted and deformed, and all the crates and the anomalies that I had been guarding were gone, save for a single unmarked hardcover book. Ignoring it, I leapt towards the doors and strained against them, but it was no use. Through the single tiny crack, I could see a wall of twisted rock that we had been wedged up against. Even if the doors were not misshapen and jammed, they were fully blocked. I was sealed in, and alone. The others, I don't know what happened to them. I tried calling out to them, hoarsely, feverishly, but there has never once been a response. As the first ray of light began to filter through that tiny crack, reflecting off the rock beyond, my eyes rested upon the book, sitting there calmly in the middle of my twisted metal coffin. SCP-6499. Its blank, featureless cover was completely pristine, undamaged from the tumble. I knew I wasn't supposed to look at it, so I did my best to push it out of my mind as I explored the van, searching desperately for something, anything else to help me break out. But nothing beside remained. Between the thudding pain in my head and the ringing in my ears, it was a long first day. As it wore on, my throat grew dry and scratchy, and I became more and more desperate, scratching and pounding on every surface. I even tried to force the crack open further with my hands, but only succeeded in slicing them to ribbons on the jagged metal. And as the reflecting light dimmed at last, I realized that I was well and truly entombed in the crushing armored frame. I nursed my injuries that night as best I could, bandaging my torn hands with cloth ripped from my shirt. It was an excruciating night, the cold seeping in through that crack, filling the van and settling into my bones. As the dawn once again returned, my eyes found the SCP, and I was filled with this understanding that I was at death's door. If the Foundation did find me, would it be before I perished from thirst? As that thought formed in my mind, I swear to you, the SCP called out to me, and I was possessed by this deep urge to approach it, to read it. It was heavy in my hands as I lifted it, trembling, from the ground. Printed on the first page was the title in simple, plain lettering. Chapters on Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. No author, no publisher, no information of any other kind. As I pored through the text, enraptured, the crushing weight of my situation began to evaporate, It was such an odd feeling. Not gradual, but all at once. My fear, my anxiety, the relentless urge to survive. It all vanished, as if this book had reached into my chest and plucked them suddenly out. No comforting realization, no insight or clarity, just gone. I was dimly aware of my body sinking back against one of the less crumpled walls of the van, but I could not tear my attention away from the book. The terror, the pounding in my head, the gnawing hunger that had twisted my stomach in knots, all of it melted away, leaving nothing in its place. I knew, logically, I should be scrambling to survive. But I wasn't. I just didn't care. It's strange. I've been to therapy before. Real therapy is about recognizing your emotions, finding skills to cope with the fear and panic, problem solving and planning out your options. It's about facing reality. But this book wasn't giving me any of that. It was like flipping an off switch. No processing, no rationalizing. Just the removal of everything I should have been feeling. Like someone had hollowed me out. With all of the panic and the drive drained away, I had only the desire to sit and wait. Just wait. The clawing, scratching thirst that had begun to crack the roof of my mouth. The hunger that had begun to gnaw away insistently at my insides. The waves of aching pain in my torn and shredded hands. Distant, faded, like an eerie background track, on loop, but so very far away. The book fell from my hands at last, and I leaned my head back against the cold metal and gazed through the crack at the dimming light beyond. I was trapped, probably dying, but I just couldn't bring myself to care anymore. And that should have terrified me. But it didn't. And it still doesn't today. From time to time, the emptiness fades, just a little. In those moments, I move around, scratching tallies into the walls, straining to hear any sign of rescue. But eventually, I face the same choice. I could keep fighting, clawing at the walls, risking painful failure and death. Or I could pick up the book again, let it take the edges off, smooth everything over into that same blank, indifferent calm. No need for panic, no need for food or water or sleep. No need to struggle, no need to escape. So I sit here and I wait, and I wonder if this is actually life, or if I am just a husk of a person who died a long, long time ago and simply never realized that. And I stare at the tally marks on the van as time continues to slip endlessly by. And I read the book and let it claim whatever it can, whatever is left. And still, I continue to wait. So, you can see what I mean, right? The final discrepancy? If SCP-6499 and D15378 are still missing, how was this report made? It's impossible. There's no way we could have gotten our hands on it if it's been trapped with Ike for an eternity. What did he even write it on? How is it typed? The obvious answer, I suppose, is that it has been faked. Someone was having themselves a bit of a laugh and wrote a completely fake report to waste everyone's time. But that's not what happened. I can't describe how I know that or why, but I just know that this report is the whole truth. I couldn't tell you what happened to cause the accident, or why the Foundation cannot find Ike and 6499. But I can tell you that this report is fact. And I have no idea how I just know that. I don't... The empty feelings of apathy were too... That feeling of just nothing is... I'm gonna be sick. I need to go.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Husk is based on SCP-6499 by Moonhorse 96 from the SCP Wiki located at scp-wiki.com/SCP-6499. It is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 unported license. This episode featured Justin Gellner as Scott Anderson. It was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please rate and review us. Email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com. Join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Visit us at Blue Sky. Or for additional content, visit our Patreon. Thanks for listening.